Christine Maxwell had seen bad mornings before, but this one took the prize. It started with a drip, then another. By the third, she knew she was in trouble. The crack in her bathroom ceiling widened as if mocking her, unleashing a steady downpour that soaked her fluffy towels, turned her vanity into a puddle, and threatened to swallow the entire room. She dashed for a mop, but it was useless. Within minutes, she was ankle-deep in water, her favorite silk robe clinging to her legs like seaweed. "Perfect, just perfect," she muttered, shoving her damp hair out of her eyes. Her landlord's phone went straight to voicemail, the kind of voicemail that screamed, "Don't bother me unless the building's on fire." Her building's maintenance team was even less reliable. So Christine made the only logical choice: pack her essentials and find a temporary escape. By noon, she was in a cab heading toward Banana Island, clutching her tote like a lifeline. The short-let platform had promised her a slice of heaven. Minimalist decor, gray and white interiors, marble counters, and, most importantly, vacant. That word glowed on the confirmation email like salvation. Vacant, meaning quiet, peaceful, and utterly devoid of human complications. The cab curved through the sleek, tree-lined streets of Banana Island, passing mansions with iron gates and glossy high-rises that seemed to scrape the Lagos sky. Christine allowed herself a small smile. Maybe the universe wasn't completely cruel. Maybe this was her chance to salvage her day. The concierge at Lagoon View Residence welcomed her with a polite nod, scanning her QR code before handing her a sleek keycard. "Enjoy your stay, Miss Maxwell." She stepped into the private elevator, already envisioning herself curled up with her laptop in silence, the lagoon glimmering just beyond the balcony. Her stress began to lift with each passing floor. Until the 12th floor, Christine tapped the keycard against the door of 12B. A small green light flashed and the lock clicked open. She pushed the door wide and froze. The apartment was everything the listing promised: airy, elegant, filled with soft, natural light. But it wasn't empty. A tall man stood by the sofa, sliding cufflinks into a case beside a half-open suitcase. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms roped with lean muscle. An undone bow tie dangled carelessly over the armrest, as if it had been tossed there mid-thought. He turned when the door shut behind her. Hazel eyes locked with hers, sharp, assessing, and colder than the AC humming in the ceiling. Christine stiffened. "Excuse me, this is 12B, right?" "It is." His voice was deep, clipped, and somehow already irritated. "Then you're in my apartment," she said, pulling up her phone with the booking details. "See? Vacant, booked, confirmed." He didn't even glance at the screen. "You shouldn't be here." Christine narrowed her eyes. "I shouldn't be here. I paid for this. Unless you're squatting in luxury apartments, in which case I'll gladly call security." The stranger straightened to his full height. He was easily 6'2", broad-shouldered, the kind of man whose presence filled the room even in silence. "I don't squat, miss." "Maxwell," she snapped. "Christine Maxwell. And you are?" "Levi Anderson. I own this apartment." The name struck her like an accusation. Of course he'd have a name like that. Precise, polished, self-assured, and of course he'd be the exact kind of man to ruin her plans on the worst day of her life. Christine crossed her arms. "Well, Mr. Anderson, there's been a mistake, but that's hardly my fault. My bathroom ceiling is about to collapse, and I need somewhere to stay. This is where I'm staying." "No, you're not." His tone was final, like he was accustomed to ending conversations in a single sentence. Her jaw dropped. "You can't just throw me out. The system let me in. That makes this my space. For now." "This is my home," he said flatly. "Then congratulations on living in a model showroom." She swept her arm toward the pristine gray and white interiors. "But the listing said vacant. I'm not leaving until I find somewhere else." Levi's hazel eyes darkened. "I don't recall offering you that option." Christine felt the last of her patience snap. "And I don't recall asking for your permission." They stood facing each other, the tension between them crackling like Lagos power lines before an outage. She could hear the faint tick of his expensive wristwatch, the low thrum of traffic across the lagoon, the sound of her own pulse hammering in her ears. Levi exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark hair as if weighing whether she was worth a headache. One night, guest room, that's it. Tomorrow morning, you're gone. Christine tilted her chin, refusing to let him see the relief flicker across her face. One night, she echoed, and for the record, you're still a snob. His mouth curved, not into a smile but something sharper. And you're careless. Sparks flew between them, invisible but unmistakable, as though the entire apartment was holding its breath. Christine dragged her toad into the foyer and forced herself not to look back at him. She told herself she was only grateful for a roof over her head, for crisp linen sheets and working plumbing. But as she shut the guest room door behind her, one thought chased her into the silence. If this was what their first meeting felt like, surviving one night under Levi Anderson's roof would be a battle, and she wasn't sure who would win. Living under the same roof with Levi Anderson was like surviving a reality show no one asked her to audition for. The first morning began with a battle over the kitchen. Christine padded in wearing leggings and an oversized tee, hair tied in a messy bun, only to find Levi already there. He stood at the stove, tall and composed in navy joggers and a crisp white t-shirt, sliding eggs onto a plate with the precision of a surgeon. The scent of freshly brewed espresso filled the air. Christine reached for a mug. Levi didn't even glance at her. "That's mine." She froze. "You don't own all the mugs." "I own everything in this apartment," he said, setting the plate on the counter. Christine gave him her brightest, fakest smile. "And yet, you're still stingy with caffeine." He slid the mug toward himself. "Some things aren't meant to be shared." "Like your sparkling personality," she muttered. He heard her. She could tell by the slight twitch in his jaw, the one that told her she was getting under his skin. Good. By afternoon, the battlefield shifted to the bathroom. The sound of water running through the pipes echoed down the hall. Christine had scheduled a Zoom meeting and needed a shower first. But when she pushed open the door, steam rolled out, and there was Levi stepping out in a towel, droplets gliding down his chest. Christine clapped a hand over her eyes and spun around. "Ever heard of locking a door?" His low voice held no apology. "Ever heard of knocking?" She stormed down the hall, cheeks burning, muttering threats about men who thought their muscles were diplomatic immunity. By evening, the balcony became their new war zone. The lagoon glittered beneath the setting sun, a view worth fighting for. Christine carried her laptop outside to take advantage of the breeze, only to find Levi already occupying the lounge chair, legs stretched, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in clipped tones. "No," he said sharply into the phone. "Sell the shares. I don't care about optics. This is survival." Christine hovered by the glass door, torn between retreating and claiming her ground. Finally, she set her laptop on the table with deliberate noise. Levi glanced up, brow arched. "Problem?" he asked. "Yes," she said sweetly. "You're sitting in my seat." His mouth twitched, almost like a smirk. "There are 2 chairs. There's one with the best view," she corrected, folding her arms. "And you're hogging it." The argument lasted 10 minutes, ending with Christine dragging the smaller chair to the opposite corner and glaring at him over her screen while the sun sank like molten gold across the lagoon. The days blurred into a strange rhythm of fights and near truces. She hated the way he monopolized the espresso machine. He hated the way she left Post-its on the fridge, reminding him to buy milk. He was neat to the point of obsession. She believed in organized chaos. Every class should have driven her to pack up and leave, but she didn't. And somewhere between the battles, the tensions simmered into something neither of them could name. It was late one night when everything shifted. Christine had finished a report past midnight, her eyes burning from staring at her laptop. Restless, she wandered into the hall, drawn by the faint clink of glass. The glow from the living room spilled across the polished floors. Levi sat alone on the sofa, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, his phone face down on the table. His shoulders slumped in a way she had never seen, the careful control stripped away. In his lap was a stack of photographs, edges frayed from years of handling. Christine froze in the doorway. One photo caught the light. A young boy with the same hazel eyes, standing beside a woman whose smile was tender and proud. Levi traced the edge of the picture with his thumb, his expression raw, unguarded. For the first time, Christine saw not the arrogant neighbor, not the polished man who treated life like a contract to be enforced. She saw loneliness. She saw loss. She saw a scar that had nothing to do with arrogance and everything to do with pain. He lifted the glass, took a slow sip, and pressed the photo against his chest as if to shield it from the world. Christine's throat tightened. She should have turned back, should have left him his privacy, but she stood rooted, her hand on the doorframe, watching the armor crack. Something inside her shifted. A thread pulled loose, unraveling her defenses. The man she thought she hated wasn't just cold or difficult. He was broken in ways she hadn't imagined. Levi looked up suddenly, his gaze colliding with hers. The mask snapped back in place, sharp and unreadable. "What are you doing up?" he asked, voice low and flat. Christine swallowed. "Couldn't sleep." His eyes flicked to the photos, then back to her. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched, filled with things unsaid. Finally, Christine whispered, "Good night, Levi." He didn't answer, but his hand tightened around the photo, and his eyes followed her as she retreated down the hall. In the quiet of her room, Christine lay awake, replaying what she'd seen. The battles, the arrogance, the sharp words. Suddenly, they felt like smoke hiding something deeper. Against her better judgment, she realized she was beginning to feel something she swore she wouldn't: curiosity. And worse, sympathy. The tension had been building for days, simmering like heat trapped under Lagos humidity. Every word between Christine and Levi seemed designed to spark. Every glance a collision. It was only a matter of time before the storm broke. It happened on a Friday night. The city outside pulsed with life, horns blaring on 3rd Mainland Bridge, music drifting up from a party 2 blocks away. Inside the apartment, silence stretched thin as glass until one wrong move shattered it. Christine found Levi in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, his phone buzzing on the counter. He was pacing, sharp movements betraying the frustration he kept leashed behind his perfect posture. "Do you ever stop brooding?" she snapped, slamming the fridge shut after realizing he'd finished the last bottle of sparkling water. He turned, hazel eyes flashing. "Do you ever stop invading my space? This isn't your space. It's ours, at least until my apartment is fixed." "You're a guest," he bit out. "Not a roommate, don't mistake the two." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Right, the great Levi Anderson wouldn't dare share his precious square footage with a mere mortal. He stepped closer, heat rolling off him. "You think this is easy for me? Having someone barge into my life, into my home, disrupting everything? God forbid anyone disrupts the great Anderson routine." Her voice rose, brittle with fury. "Newsflash, Levi, not everything revolves around you." His jaw tightened, eyes burning into hers. "You drive me insane." "Good," she shot back. "The feeling's mutual." And then it happened. The words dissolved into silence, into something sharper, heavier. Their breathing tangled in the air between them. One step forward, then another, until there was no distance left. Christine's back hit the counter, his hands braced on either side of her, trapping her in. She should have pushed him away, should have walked off with her pride intact. Instead, her body betrayed her, aching for the fire she saw flickering in his eyes. The kiss was violent at first, teeth clashing, years of restraint and irritation pouring out all at once. But then it deepened, slowed, turned molten. His lips softened, coaxing instead of demanding. And Christine's world tilted on its axis. Her fingers fisted in his shirt, dragging him closer. He lifted her easily, setting her on the counter as if she weighed nothing. His mouth tracing the line of her jaw, her throat, the hollow at her collarbone. Every touch was electric, every sigh pulled from her chest like a secret. "Christine," he breathed, her name breaking on his tongue like a prayer he didn't know he knew. She clung to him, nails grazing his back through the fabric. The arrogance she hated in him was gone. What remained was raw, desperate, human. He touched her like a man starved of warmth, like he'd been waiting for her without realizing it. The kitchen blurred. Lagos beyond the glass faded. There was only the heat of his body, the rasp of his breath, the way his hands trembled against her skin. They stumbled toward his bedroom, leaving a trail of discarded clothing. When he laid her down, it wasn't with the cold control she'd expected, but with reverence, as though every curve of her body demanded worship. He kissed her as if memorizing her, mapping the soft and the strong, the broken and the whole. Christine felt herself unravel beneath him, every wall, every defense stripped bare. Their lovemaking was not just physical, it was an eruption of everything they'd denied, everything they'd buried under insults and sarcasm. It was wild, yes, but threaded with moments of aching tenderness. The way his hand cupped her cheek, the way he whispered her name like it mattered. When the storm finally broke, it was soul-crushingly beautiful, messy, consuming, undeniable. For one night, they weren't enemies. For one night, the morning after, was cruel. Christine woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains, her body aching in places she hadn't realized could ache. For a moment, she let herself smile, eyes fluttering shut as she traced her memory of the night. The heat, the whispers, the unguarded Levi who had held her as though she was more than a mistake. She rolled over to find him sitting at the edge of the bed, already dressed in a crisp shirt, his tie half knotted. His face was unreadable, his posture stiff. "Levi," she murmured, pushing up on her elbows. He didn't look at her. This shouldn't have happened. The words sliced through her. "What?" "Last night." His tone was flat, clinical. "It was a mistake." Christine's stomach turned. "A mistake? That's what you call it?" His eyes flicked to her, hard and unyielding. "I lost control. It won't happen again." Her chest tightened, humiliation burning her throat. "You make it sound like I threw myself at you. I'm saying it was reckless, and I don't do reckless." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "No, you do arrogant, self-righteous, and cold. Last night you did human, and now you can't stand the thought of it." He stood, knotting his tie with precise, deliberate movements. "Forget it happened, Christine. We both will." Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. "You can forget. I can't." He hesitated for half a heartbeat, something flickering in his eyes. Guilt, regret. She couldn't tell. Then he left, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Christine alone in a bed that smelled like him. She wrapped the sheet around herself and buried her face in her hands. She had let him in, not just into her body, but into her heart. And he had dismissed it as nothing. She swore she would never give him that power again. Weeks later, Christine sat on the edge of her bathtub, the one that had caused all this chaos to begin with, her hands shaking as she clutched the plastic stick in her hand. Two pink lines stared back at her, undeniable and final. Her breath caught. Morning sickness, mood swings, exhaustion. It all made sense now. She pressed a trembling hand to her stomach. Inside her was more than a consequence of a mistake. Inside her was life. His life. Their life. Tears blurred her vision as 1,000 emotions collided. Fear, anger, wonder. Levi Anderson might call it a mistake, but the tiny heartbeat inside her said otherwise. And Christine knew in that moment, nothing about what had happened between them could ever be erased. Christine had rehearsed it a dozen times in her head. She'd tried out calm explanations in the mirror, stern ultimatums in the shower, even a half-hearted joke in traffic. But nothing felt right. How did you tell a man who swore their one night was a mistake that it had changed everything? She found Levi in the living room hunched over his laptop. His tie hung loose in the light from the screen, carved sharp shadows across his face. He looked like the very definition of control. Every line straight, every movement precise. Christine's heart pounded against her ribs, the secret heavy in her throat. "Levi," she began. He didn't look up. "What is it?" Her palms were clammy. She forced the words out. "I'm pregnant!" The sound of keys clicking stopped. Slowly, he raised his head. Hazel eyes met hers, unreadable at first. Then, in the space of a heartbeat, they hardened. "Pregnant?" His voice was flat. She nodded, clutching her arms. "Yes, it's yours." The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Then came the explosion. "You can't be serious," he snapped, pushing back his chair. "This isn't possible." "It is," she said, her voice trembling. "I've seen the doctor." His hands raked through his hair as he paced the room. No, Christine, you can't just... How could you let this happen?" Her eyes burned. "Let it happen? It takes two people, Levi. You were there." He froze as if struck. Then his voice dropped to a growl. "This is exactly why I keep my life contained. One reckless night, and everything unravels." Her chest tightened, her anger rising to match his. "Unravels? That's what you call a child? Your child?" He turned away, fists clenched at his sides. "I can't do this." The words hit her like a slap. For a long moment she stared at him, at the man she thought she'd glimpsed tenderness in, and felt the air drain from her lungs. "Fine," she whispered. "Then don't." "But I will. With or without you." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." She looked back. He stood frozen by the window, his face pale, the fight drained from him. His shoulders slumped, his hands shaking slightly. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, broken. "My father walked out when I was 6, left my mother to raise me alone. No warning, no explanation, just gone. I swore I'd never put anyone through that, but I don't know if I can be the man you want me to be." Christine's breath caught. For the first time, she saw the fear beneath the arrogance. The boy he had once been, still haunted by the ghost of abandonment. She softened just a little. "Levi, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you not to run." His gaze lifted to hers, raw and unguarded. Slowly, he crossed the room, stopping just short of touching her. His hand hovered, then landed gently against her stomach. The contact was tentative, reverent, as though he were afraid she might vanish. "You're sure?" he whispered. She nodded, tears blurring her vision. "I'm sure." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he exhaled, shaky but resolute. "Then I'm here. I don't know how to do this. I'll probably get it wrong. But I won't walk away." The words cracked something open inside her. She let him pull her into his arms, let herself sink into the warmth of him. His lips brushed her temple, a tender promise hidden in the gesture. For the first time since the test turned positive, she felt less alone. In the days that followed, Levi changed. Subtly at first, he started leaving water bottles on her nightstand, adding ginger tea to the grocery list, making sure she ate when nausea knocked her down. His sharp edges softened, replaced with an unexpected protectiveness. One evening, when she complained about the baby apps comparing the embryo to fruit, he smirked. "So what is it today?" "A bean," she said, rolling her eyes. His hand slid over hers. "Our bean," he murmured. It was the smallest thing, but it unraveled her defenses. For once, she let herself believe they could be something more than enemies bound by circumstance. But happiness, Christine knew, never came without a shadow. The first whisper reached her through a friend at work. Rumors about Levi Anderson's company, whispers of corruption, a deal gone bad, investors pulling out. She dismissed it at first. Gossip always clung to powerful men. But then she noticed the phone calls he took late at night, his clipped responses, the way his jaw tightened when he thought she wasn't watching. The warmth in his eyes dimmed, replaced by the steel she'd seen when they first met. And one morning, as she walked through the lobby of his building, she overheard two men in suits whispering, "Anderson's finished. Just wait, the truth always comes out." Christine's stomach twisted. She pressed a hand to her still flat belly and prayed the fragile bond she and Levi had built could survive whatever storm was coming. Because for the first time, it wasn't just her heart at stake, it was their child's too. The storm hit on a Tuesday morning. Christine arrived at her office in Victoria Island, balancing a laptop bag in one hand and a paper cup of ginger tea in the other. She hadn't even settled into her desk before a headline flashed across her phone: Anderson Capital under investigation for fraudulent dealings. Her heart sank. The article was brutal. Claims of embezzlement, whispers of offshore accounts, speculation that Levi Anderson's empire was built on lies. The piece ended with an ominous line: "Sources suggest more revelations are coming." Christine gripped the edge of her desk, nausea rising. It wasn't just the pregnancy, it was fear. That evening, when she returned to the apartment, Levi was already home, his jacket tossed carelessly over a chair, tie yanked loose. He was on the phone pacing. His voice was sharp, controlled, but his eyes, when they flicked to hers, were haunted. "No comment," he said into the receiver before hanging up. Christine stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Is it true?" He didn't ask what she meant. His silence was answer enough. "Levi," her voice trembled, "tell me I'm not about to raise a child in the middle of a scandal." He ran a hand through his hair, looking more human, more tired than she'd ever seen him. "It's not what they're saying. Yes, there were mistakes, investments that went south, partners I shouldn't have trusted. But fraud? No, that's not me." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the headlines screamed otherwise, and her stomach twisted with doubt. The doubts multiplied when she showed up. Vanessa. Tall, sleek, polished, with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Levi's ex. She cornered Christine in the lobby, her perfume cloying, her eyes glittering with malice. "You're the new one?" Vanessa asked sweetly, her gaze flicking to Christine's still flat belly. "Poor thing. You really think Levi Anderson is capable of being a father? He couldn't even commit to me, and I was everything he ever wanted." Christine's throat tightened. "I don't need your opinion." Vanessa leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "He'll disappoint you. He always does. And when the truth about his family comes out, you'll wish you never let him touch you." Christine shoved past her, but the words stuck like poison. That night, she demanded answers. "Family secrets, Levi. What did she mean?" Levi's face shuddered. For a long time, he said nothing. Then finally, the truth slipped out. "My father didn't just leave us. He stole from us. From my mother, from me. He drained every account, disappeared with a woman half his age, and left us bankrupt. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. That's a legacy I carry. And now they say I'm like him." Christine's chest ached. She reached for him, but he flinched back, shame written across his face. "I can't outrun his shadow," he whispered. "Every mistake I make, every risk I take, it becomes proof that I'm his son. Levi," he shook his head, "you should leave me. Save yourself. Save the baby." Her heart cracked at the resignation in his voice. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him she wasn't going anywhere, but fear dug its claws deep. Could she trust him? Could she tie her future to a man whose world was built on secrets and scandals? For days she wrestled with it. The pregnancy was real, undeniable, but the man beside her felt like a stranger again. Distant, angry, closed off. The tabloids splashed his name across every page. Vanessa whispered poison in her ear, and the ghost of his father loomed over everything. Yet there were moments that broke through the chaos, like when he found her crying in the kitchen and knelt on the cold marble floor beside her, cupping her face with trembling hands. "I don't know how to be the man you deserve," he admitted, "but I want to try." Or when he pressed a hand to her stomach late at night, whispering, "I don't just want to be his father's opposite. I want to be this child's father. I want to be yours." Those moments anchored her, even as the storm raged. The battle between love and fear reached its peak one evening when the two of them argued until their voices were raw. "You think I don't want to trust you?" Christine shouted, tears streaking her cheeks. "I do. But every time I open a newspaper, every time that woman shows up, it feels like I'm making the biggest mistake of my life." Levi's chest heaved, his own eyes glistening. "And you think this is easy for me? Do you have any idea how much I want you to believe me? To look at me and not see him, to know that, for once in my life, I'm not running, I'm not lying, I'm fighting for you?" The silence that followed was thick, trembling. Christine stared at him, her breath catching. For the first time, she saw not just the arrogant businessman or the broken son of a thief. She saw a man desperate to rewrite his story. And in that moment, she realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting to protect herself or the baby. She was fighting for him too. But whether love was strong enough to silence the ghosts of his past, that was a battle yet to be won. Christine had always prided herself on her strength, but even strength had limits. Vanessa tested them all. It began with whispers. Ugly rumors slipped into the right ears, seated in places where Christine couldn't defend herself. She heard from a colleague that Vanessa claimed she'd fabricated the pregnancy to trap Levi. Another day, she received a cruel anonymous email with doctored photos suggesting she was seeing another man. And then came the cruelest of all. A lie whispered loudly enough to reach Christine's ears that she'd already lost the baby. Christine's hands trembled when she confronted Levi in the penthouse, her face pale. "She's telling people I'm not even pregnant anymore, that I made it all up. Do you understand what that does to me? To us?" Levi's jaw clenched, his fury contained but dangerous. "Vanessa thrives on destruction, but I promise you, Christine, she won't touch you again." But promises were only words, and Christine was drowning in doubt. The scandal surrounding Anderson Capital hadn't died down, and now her reputation, her very identity as the mother of his child, was being questioned. The breaking point came on the night of the Lagos Business Charity Gala, held in a ballroom glittering with chandeliers, polished marble, and the quiet hum of the elite. Christine hadn't wanted to attend, but Levi insisted. "If we hide, they win," he told her, fastening his cufflinks with steady hands. "Tonight, I set the record straight." She had walked in on his arm, her midnight blue gown flowing like liquid, her wavy hair pinned elegantly. But the weight of every gaze pressed against her skin. Conversations hushed as they passed. She caught snippets. "Is it true? Poor girl. Trapped him, that's what she did." And then Vanessa appeared. Draped in scarlet silk, her smile as sharp as glass, she glided across the ballroom like she owned it. "Levi," she purred, ignoring Christine entirely. "Still playing house with your little actress? Tell me, does she even believe the baby story herself?" Christine's breath caught, her chest tightening. Around them, the crowd leaned in, hungry for spectacle. Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing, turning Christine into a spectacle, a headline. Before Christine could gather her words, Levi stepped forward. His voice cut through the murmur like a blade. "Enough." The room stilled. He looked at Vanessa, eyes hard, jaw set. "You think you can keep poisoning my life, but it ends tonight. Christine is carrying my child. She is the woman I love. And if anyone here believes your lies, they'll see the truth soon enough. Because I will not leave her. Not now. Not ever." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed, but Levi wasn't finished. He turned, cupping Christine's hand in his voice steady but raw. "I've made mistakes," he said, the words carrying to every corner of the glittering hall. "I've lived in the shadow of a man I swore I'd never become. I've let pride and fear dictate my life, but not anymore. Not when it means losing you. Christine, you and our baby are my future. And if the world has a problem with that, they can watch us prove them wrong." Christine's vision blurred with tears. His hand was warm, firm, anchoring her as the room erupted into whispers. He had dropped every wall, every ounce of cold control, and laid himself bare. not just to her, but to the world. She pressed her trembling palm against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath the fabric. "Levi!" Her voice broke. "Do you mean it?" His eyes softened, hazel flickering with something fierce and tender all at once. "Every word!" For a moment, time seemed to stop. The chandeliers shimmered above them, Lagos glittered beyond the glass windows, and Christine realized that no matter how messy, how chaotic, how terrifying their beginning had been, this man, flawed, scarred, imperfect, was hers, and she was his. She leaned in, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that silenced every whisper, every doubt. It wasn't polished or perfect. It was raw, messy, real. The kind of kiss that told the truth better than words ever could. When they broke apart, the room exploded into chatter. Some disbelieving, some envious, some secretly rooting for them. Vanessa stood frozen, her smile gone, her eyes burning with defeat. Christine didn't look at her. She only looked at Levi. He pulled her close, his hand protective over her still flat stomach. "We'll weather this storm," he whispered against her hair. "Together." And for the first time, Christine believed it. That night, as the city lights of Lagos shimmered below, they returned to the apartment hand in hand. Christine kicked off her heels, collapsing onto the sofa, laughter bubbling out of her through the tears. "I can't believe you did that," she said, shaking her head. Levi dropped beside her, loosening his tie, eyes still burning with the fire of the fight. "I should have done it sooner." He reached for her, pulling her into his lap. She rested her head against his shoulder, her body finally relaxing for the first time in weeks. The world outside was still full of shadows. Rumors, scandals, enemies waiting for them to fail. But in that moment, Christine knew they had chosen each other, against the odds, against the chaos, against everything. And that choice made her feel invincible. The apartment didn't feel the same anymore. It was brighter now, even on gray mornings when the Lagos skyline was wrapped in haze. The silence that once felt heavy had been replaced with soft noises. Tiny whimpers, the rustle of blankets, the occasional sharp wail that shattered the air and made Christine laugh through her exhaustion. In the corner of the master bedroom sat a crib painted soft cream, a mobile of stars spinning lazily above it. And in that crib lay the reason everything had changed. A baby girl, their daughter, sleeping with one tiny fist curled against her cheek. Christine sat in the armchair beside the crib, rocking slowly as she cradled a warm bottle against her chest. Her body still ached from the delivery, her hair a tangled mess, but she'd never felt more whole. "You should be sleeping," came Levi's low voice from the doorway. She looked up to find him leaning against the frame, sleeves rolled up, tie undone. Fatherhood had transformed him in subtle ways. The arrogance was still there. It was part of who he was, but now it was tempered by something softer, something deeper. He had shadows in his eyes still, but there was also light. Christine smiled faintly. "You should be sleeping too." He stepped into the room, his gaze fixed on the crib. "I don't want to miss a second." She handed him the bottle, and he crossed the room, lowering himself into the chair beside her. Carefully, almost reverently, he lifted the baby into his arms. His large hands dwarfed her tiny body, but his touch was impossibly gentle. "Hey, Beansprout," he murmured, brushing his lips against her downy hair. "Daddy's here." Christine's throat tightened. The first time he'd called the baby our Bean was half joking, a way to ease her fears. Now it was their secret language, a reminder of how far they'd come from that first clash in his kitchen. "She looks like you," Christine whispered. Levi glanced at her, brow raised. "No, she doesn't. She has your mouth, that stubborn little pout." Christine laughed softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Then heaven help us both." They sat in silence for a while, watching the baby drift back into sleep. Christine traced the lines of Levi's arm with her fingers, marveling at how natural it felt now. This closeness, this peace. There had been a time she thought they'd destroy each other. But somehow, through the chaos, they had built something solid. She thought back to the gala, to the moment he had stood before the entire city and chosen her. That declaration had silenced Vanessa, quieted the rumors, and begun to heal the wounds left by his father's legacy. It hadn't been easy afterward. There were still articles, still doubters, still nights of doubt, but Levi had never wavered again. And now, as she watched him hold their daughter, she knew his promise had been real. "You know," she said softly, "I thought I'd lost myself in all of this. Between the pregnancy, the scandal, your past, I thought I'd never feel steady again." Levi turned, his hazel eyes locking with hers. "And now?" She smiled through the tears brimming in her eyes. "Now I feel like I've found myself. With you, with her." He leaned down, kissing her gently. It wasn't the desperate kiss of that night in the kitchen, or the fiery one at the gala. This kiss was slower, deeper, the kiss of two people who had fought, bled, and chosen each other again and again. When they parted, Christine brushed her thumb over his jaw. "Thank you for not walking away." Levi's voice was low, steady. "Thank you for not letting me." Later that evening, as the city lights flickered to life and the lagoon shimmered like scattered diamonds, Levi carried their daughter to the balcony. Christine followed, wrapping her robe tighter around her as the warm breeze lifted her hair. The view was the same as it had been the first night she'd stumbled into his apartment: lagoon, skyline, glittering lights. But it no longer felt like enemy territory. It was home. Levi stood with the baby cradled against his chest, his gaze sweeping the city below. "I used to think success was this," he said quietly, nodding at the towers and lights. "The money, the power, the empire. But all of it means nothing compared to this moment." Christine slipped her hand into his. "Then hold on to it." He turned to her, eyes soft, vulnerable in a way they had never been before. "I will. I promise you, Christine. You and our little bean sprout. You're my everything." Tears blurred her vision, but she smiled, leaning against him as the baby sighed in her sleep. The chaos that had once defined them had settled into peace. Not perfect peace. Life would always bring storms, but the kind that held steady through the wind. As the night deepened around them, Christine realized something she had never admitted out loud. For all the pain, the arguments, the doubts, she wouldn't change the story. Not one clash, not one mistake, not even the messy beginning that had left her soaked and furious in a stranger's apartment. Because every step, every storm had brought her here. Here, with Levi Anderson's arm around her, their daughter against his chest, in a future she hadn't dared dream of. It wasn't the life she planned. It was better. It was theirs.